Welcome to Bryan College Online, and this is our discussion of Jesus, God, and the Trinity, John 1, and the parallels to that. And what we're going to look at, and the discussion starters for your groups and classes, if you're interacting with people or your online chats, what the discussion starter will be are these questions. How are Jesus and God related? Of course, we're Christian and we believe in Trinitarian theology, but often people say, well, Jesus prayed to God as his father, so doesn't that make Jesus different? We're going to look at the idea, when you think of God in the Old Testament, how is that idea related to God in the New Testament? And is the Trinity a biblical idea, or is it later theology? Often people point out that the word Trinity, trinitas, tri-unity, a trifold unity, dates from the time of Tertullian. Is this really appropriate to speak of plurality within the more basic unity of God? And so that's what we're going to look at together today. And where I want to start is this idea of there being a connection between John 1 and Genesis 1. And I invite you to pause the video here and to just read through the two passages and ask questions. Is John commenting on Genesis 1? And so I invite you to pause the video now and to look at the connections. Okay, now that you've done that, we can see that both are in the beginning. Both are about God creating. Without him, not anything was made. Both have something to do with light and darkness, and in both passages light wins out. It seems fairly clear that when John is coming to Genesis 1, he's giving us his commentary on that passage, and he's pointing out that not only is it a factual, historic event, but at the same time it points beyond itself to greater spiritual truth. In other words, God has used history and fact in a way that also conveys theological meaning. And of course, Paul does the same thing in quoting, God has shown into our hearts. He's saying there was a reason God created the way he did, and it was foreshadowing later theology. Now, when we come to this passage, it's clear, and I don't know if you know this or not, but the original language of the Bible, there are three ancient languages, Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek, and often when you look at those languages, there are things in the original language that actually just are amazingly beautiful, and sometimes that's hard to see in a English translation. And so what I want to do today is point out something that every reader of the original language will see, and it may help us understand exactly what John is doing here. Now, when we look at the original language, this is the Hebrew printed text. This is a very old language. It's so old that it's read from right to left. When we look at this language, it's a beautiful sounding language. I'm just going to read the very first verse for you. Bereshit bara Elohim et ha-shamayim va'et ha'aretz. This is a beautiful language. It claims, this written text is claiming to be about 3,500 years old. It's one of the oldest written anything that we have on planet Earth. And it's beautiful, but it's an old text. Wonderful website here at the University of Washington. If you want to go through and hear all the words, you can just hover over the text and they'll give you a perfect translation. And that's University of Washington, Near Eastern Languages and Civilization. It's read from right to left, and there's a problem. There's a problem in this early verse that nearly everyone who's ever tried to read this ancient text recognizes. Ancient readers, Philo recognizes it, ancient Jews recognize that there's a problem in this text, a grammatical problem, and I want to try to point it out to you so we can think about it together. And it has to do with the second word and the third word, bara Elohim. Now, when we come to the Greek text, you can see that's much friendlier looking. It looks a little like English. It even sounds a little like English. 30+% of the English language is just Greek. And so it's NRK, ein ha logos, kai ha logos ein pros, ton theon kai theos, ein ha logos. Beautiful sounding language. Much of the English language comes from Greek, a little friendlier looking than Hebrew. But some scholars believe that what John is doing in this, the word was in the beginning and the word was with God, the word was God, is actually, he may be trying to explain this bara Elohim in the Hebrew text. And let me kind of point out what's going on here and why it's so important for us to get our minds around together today. Beautiful connections between Genesis 1:1-5 and John 1:1-5. When we come to the text and we read this word Bereshit, it means in the beginning, and there's not really much debate about the way to translate it. Virtually everyone translates it in beginning. You might do in beginning of, but most people don't think that's the right way. It's just straightforward. In the beginning, bara Elohim. Bereshit in Greek, when it was translated about 280 BC, it was translated NRK, and you might pick up that that's exactly how John is beginning John 1:1, and why a lot of people think that John 1:1-5 is actually John's commentary on Genesis 1:1-5. When we come to the second word in Hebrew means he created. Now, a little bit later, we're going to point out why that's the case, why it isn't she created or they created. But if you take my word for it until we get to that slide, it means he created. Everyone who's ever looked at the text knows that that's what it means. Now, when we come in English, so like if you said in English, in the beginning he created, in English the next word would be what he created, because that's how English works. We use word order. Very few other languages do it that way, and Hebrew doesn't do it that way. Hebrew uses this little symbol et to show what he created. So in the beginning he created, and what did he create? He created Hashemayim and Haaretz. Bereshit bara Elohim et. That's the sign. This is telling you what he created. He created the heavens and the earth. So, and that's straightforward. If you went to any Hebrew scholar, they're going to say, yeah, that's how it works. You have this bara et vaet, and it's saying this is what that he created. Not much controversy there, not any controversy. It means he created the heavens and the earth. And when you say heavens and the earth, that's the Jewish way of saying all things. And you might remember that John is talking about all things are made through him. And so this is another reason that John 1:1-5 is a commentary on Genesis 1. So he created heavens and the earth. Now, when we look at John 1, notice that John is making the point that it's the Logos with God who is making all things. The Hebrew text says, in the beginning, God made all things, and John is saying, in the beginning, the Logos and God together created. And you might say, well, how is John getting that? Well, John's getting that because he can see something in the original languages that we can't see, at least until someone points it out. And that's what I want to do for us today. And it comes around to this word Elohim. Bereshit bara, in the beginning he created. And who is the he? It doesn't say he created Elohim, it's saying who the he is. In the beginning he, that is Elohim, created the heavens and the earth. Why is that so important? Why is it a problem? Well, it's a problem because when you say that, Bereshit bara Elohim, in Hebrew you've just broken this grammatical rule. And I want to try to point it out to you. And you may know more Hebrew than you think. Let me see if I can prove it to you. In Hebrew, the word horse is the word sus. I think the word Susanna comes from she who's graceful with horses or something like that. But if you got a horse, it's called a sus. And if you want to talk about a bunch of horses, you add susim to the end. Hirik, yod, mem. Im will convert a masculine noun to the plural version of that noun. And so, oddly enough, in Hebrew, the word for fish is the word dog. I remember we all laughed really hard when our professor told us that the word dog is fish in Hebrew. And so if you've got one fish, it's a dog. And if you've got a bunch of fish, it's dogim. You add that hirik, yod, mem to the end. It will convert the word to the plural. And you're probably familiar with cherubs, some kind of special angel on top of the Ark of the Covenant. One is called a cherub. If you want to talk about a bunch of cherubs, you call them cherubim. And so in English, you add that im ending, and that converts it from the masculine singular form to the masculine plural. And those fiery entities in Isaiah 6, one is a seraph, and then a bunch of them are called seraphim. So you add that hirik, yod, mem, and it converts the noun to the plural. Now the problem comes when we come to the word God. Moses knew that the word God is spelled this way, Eloah. And there's one time he actually spells it that way in Deuteronomy 4. God is Eloah. The problem is that most of the time when the word God appears, Moses doesn't spell it this way. Moses spells it Elohim. And if you just look in this list, im, normally that's would convert this word to the plural form. And so the word Elohim, Bereshit bara Elohim, when you say Elohim, normally you would translate that gods. But you can't translate it that way because of the word bara. Here's proof. I think I said Deuteronomy 4, it's Deuteronomy 32. It says, and I can just move out of the way, then he forsook Eloah. Then he forsook God. And if you wanted to say, well, show me somewhere in the Bible where the word Elohim is actually translated God. And so if we go to a computer program, this is the Bible Works, I just typed in the word Elohim and show me every time in the ESV where Elohim is translated by the word gods, plural. And when we run the program, all of these are places. And, Exodus 23, you shall have no other gods before me or on my faces, upon my faces. And look, Elohim, that's just our standard way of saying the word God, Elohim Aharim. So you might ask, well, why don't you translate the word Elohim gods? In the beginning, gods created the heavens and the earth. Well, most of the time when you come across the word Elohim in the Hebrew Bible, you won't translate it gods, you'll translate it God, because the verbs that are being used in the singular. Let's look at this. So we've already said that bara means he created. And I said, I'm going to try to prove to you that that's the case. Well, you say, well, prove it to me. Okay, well, here it is. In English, we don't inflect our verbs for the most part. You know, if you got the word paint, it can be he painted, she painted, they painted. We don't change the word, we just add stuff in English, and that shows you who did it. Most other languages don't do it that way. Most other languages will do this. This is Latin, and so amo is the word love. So I love, you love, he, she, or it loves, we love, you love, they love. If you've ever had the privilege of taking a foreign language, you've memorized lots of charts like that, because you just add stuff to the end and it shows you, is it an I or is it a they? Well, same thing in German. You add little bits and it tells you who's doing the action. Same thing in French. You add little bits to the end, it shows you, is it I, is it he, is it we, is it they? Same thing in Spanish. In fact, most languages are going to inflect their verbs, and you can tell who's doing the action. Well, when you come to Hebrew, they not only show first, second, and third, but they actually have a separate form if it's masculine. So this is the word kill, he killed. And if you wanted to say she killed, this would be the verb. And if you wanted to say you killed and you're talking to a person who's a man, you would do it this way. And if it's you killed and you were talking to a woman, you would do it this way. And so instead of just having the 6 that most languages have, Hebrew has all these because it can differentiate just by looking at the verb between a he and a they, a she and a he. And so when we come to the word bara, and I'll just step out of the way, you're looking for this pattern, and you can see that the only one that fits it is here. And you say, well, why is that different? Well, it's different because it's being accented, but this is the same one. It doesn't have any of the additional letters. So this has to mean, if this means he killed, then bara is the word create. This has to mean he created. It can't be they created. It can't be she created. It has to be he created. So 2 words into the text, Moses is establishing that the person who created everything that there is a single entity and can be described as a he. But when Moses tells you who the he is and says that he is an Elohim, he's introducing a plurality, some kind of undefined plurality in this unity that's a he. It's a he, they. It's a he who, in an unstated way, has this plurality. Thus, the very first words of the Bible introduce a view of God which hints at a view of God as a plurality within a greater unity. B.B. Warfield described the Old Testament as a lavishly furnished room, dimly lit, and he says, well, is Elohim in Genesis 1:1 the Trinity? And he says, well, if you're talking technically, the word's not coined, for many centuries later. But Warfield said the Old Testament is like a lavishly furnished room, dimly lit. And so if you're going in a dark room, say a library, and you have one candle, you can make out that on the shelves there are books, but you can't really see what color they are or read any of the names. But the more candles that come in, the more clearly you can see the content of the room. And so what Warfield said, and what I and a lot of other people believe, is that God did something in the text that would begin to have us ask the question, well, why do you have so many plural things connected with God? Why do you have three men in Genesis 18 appear, and all three of them talk together, and all three of them allow things, and then it starts calling two of the entities there God, and two of the entities there Yahweh? Why do you have the burning bush and the angel of the Lord, and then you begin to describe that angel as God? Well, Warfield says it's because God was hinting at something that he finally would fully reveal. And so it isn't that the content of the room changes, it's that more light, progressive revelation has come in. So when we come to the passage in John, what John is telling us is he's saying, hey, you remember that thing the rabbi could never explain, to us, why God in so many places in the Old Testament is this mysterious unity that has within the unity plurality somehow? Well, John says, well, let me tell you, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. That is, there was community, there was relationship, there really were plural things there. And then John says, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him not one thing was made that has been made. In him was life, and the life was the light of mankind, and the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. All of those things are John's instruction in saying, when you read Genesis 1 and you want to know who Jesus is, that's who he is. He's included within the unity of God. So it isn't God sending someone else to do his work, but this entity who from the beginning was a he, they. The I-ness of God doesn't bring into dispute the we-ness of God, and the we-ness of God doesn't bring into dispute the I-ness of God, the I, we, the he, they. And when we come to the New Testament, we're going to see that that's exactly how the New Testament writers began to understand who Jesus is. So take some time, talk about these things, consider them, and just kind of a parting thing, we might ask the question, well, can we learn anything else from the original language? Well, there is something that strikes me when we come to this word bara, and I ask myself the question, is there any place else in the Hebrew Bible where the word bara is used with Elohim? It turns out there are. So all of these passages, and you can look those up for yourself, but the one that I'm really interested in is David's prayer of repentance. And there, in his prayer of repentance, he says, Leiv tahor, a heart of purity, a purity heart, a clean heart, create for me, O Elohim. And David, having slept with Bathsheba and having murdered her husband and then tried to cover up the pregnancy that he brought about, he's saying, if I'm ever going to have a pure heart, God, please create that in me. And you might remember that Jesus said in the Beatitudes that it's the pure in heart who will see God. Well, how do you get a pure heart? Well, you get a pure heart by God creating that pure heart. And so we're going to look at a lot of different things. See what you think. Discuss this among yourself, and I will talk to you next time.